Water rates in California are increasing significantly. In certain parts of the state, like San Diego, there are proposals to increase the water fees up to 60% over the next few years. And in some other areas, they have definitely outpaced the inflation. Today, we sit down with a couple of water experts in California to see what's happening. I'm Siamai Karami. Welcome to California Insider. Joe, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We want to talk to you about water issues, and this is a big topic for us in California. We have had droughts, but now the water rates are going up for a lot of Californians. Not everybody, but a lot of districts in California are facing massive rate rises. Can you tell us what's happening?
Water affordability is a concern in the water industry. There are inflationary pressures that are beyond our control. Commodities and materials that we have to purchase for water treatment have increased significantly. We've also seen significant increase in energy costs. We've seen all these costs increase, and frankly, many of them are just beyond our control.
Tell us about the power cost.
So if you think about it, statewide, the water industry is the largest consumer of energy. Because we have to move water, in some cases, hundreds of miles from the Colorado River to Southern California and from the Bay Delta in San Francisco down to Southern California. That takes a lot of pumping, a lot of energy. And then when we receive it, we also then have to pump it, we have to store it, we have to treat it. So energy is a big expenditure. In California, you have a lot of small water systems. And with small water systems, you don't have sufficient revenue stream. You don't have enough customers. And in today's regulatory environment, given the regulations that we're seeing, those small systems are having challenges meeting water quality requirements, frankly, even operating in a sustainable fashion. You know, we've long advocated for foundational structural solutions for the small systems, simply because they are not sustainable long term. What we have proposed in past years is consolidation of these small systems many of them are on the verge of failing. Simply, they can't address some of the water quality challenges they have or the infrastructure requirements. So yes, smaller systems have greater challenges than larger water systems in the state.
You mentioned they're facing challenges meeting the regulation. Is it for purifying the water?
It's a number of challenges. Most recently, I think you'll hear a lot about PFAS. PFAS is a forever chemical that was introduced many decades ago. It's in everyday products that we use, from the Teflon nonstick pans to Gore-Tex clothing that's nonstick to firefighting chemicals. Over decades of use in our communities, that contaminant has seeped into the groundwater. And now, frankly, us and many others throughout the state are being asked to clean up the contaminant. You know, our position has been, we're a non-passive receiver of that contaminant. We didn't create it. We didn't put it in the ground. Why should our ratepayers be responsible to clean it up? So to that end, we have been pursuing various funding, whether it's settlement with the companies who are responsible for creating the chemical, or working with the federal government to secure external funding. We're trying everything we can to shield, again, our ratepayers from essentially having an unfunded mandate to clean up this contaminant. And the mandate is both on the state side as well as federal side.
As someone reporting on California's economy and policies every week, unfortunately, I see the middle class shrinking in California. Some of it has to do with our policies, and there is another side to this, that we are facing major inflation here and across the country. Unfortunately, the dollar has lost 10% of its value just this year to date. That's why more and more people are turning to real assets to protect their financial future, like physical gold and silver from American Hard-Fork Gold. Unlike paper assets, these tangible investments can't be controlled or devalued by inflation or bad policies. You can have them delivered straight to your home or securely stored in a tax-advantaged gold IRA, giving you a safe, reliable way to safeguard your wealth, no matter what happens in California or the rest of the country. American Hard-Fork Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of 5-star reviews. And right now, when you call, you can get up to $15,000 in free silver with your first purchase. Call 866-595-2304. That's 866-595-2304 or text Cali to 65532. Beat the system and protect your wealth with something real today.
How much effort does it take to clean up this contaminant?
It can be significant. I think you have a number of water agencies throughout the state who are currently dealing with cleanup. It's the groundwater that may have the presence of PFAS. You have to process through additional treatment processes to remove it. And it's not just a one-time effort. It's continuous because the contaminant is so widespread. So it can add significant amount of cost to treating and delivering the water.
The cost of material has gone up. Is the cost of water gone up? Do you guys pay for water when you import?
Imported water, we purchase from Metropolitan. Now, I will say this, we import about 50% of our overall water demand. That wasn't always the case. We used to import about 2/3 of the water. Over years and decades of investing in local supplies like recycled water, our own filtration, groundwater desalination, a number of other water development projects, we've been able to reduce our reliance on imported supplies. But to your point, the cost of water for Met is driven by how much it costs to deliver it down to Southern California and to treat it. It's really the cost of managing the water, storing the water, delivering the water, and treating it. That's what ultimately is passed on to the customer.
In terms of cost of materials going up, what materials is going up that you guys need?
You have disinfectants that you have to purchase to use in water treatment. You have various coagulants, filters. Everything you purchase these days, unfortunately, has increased in cost. Plus, as I mentioned, energy is a big factor in what we do and a large expenditure as well.
There is a lot of different agencies across the state that are raising their costs. The ratepayers are complaining to us, and we've been hearing from them.
Yeah.
What are the main factors behind this?
I think we're at a critical juncture in the water industry, statewide. We're having more severe droughts in our area, and the precipitation is still occurring, and the snowpack is still occurring. It's just the patterns are different. It's coming in more intense periods, and the snowpack isn't staying as long as it used to stay. It's melting earlier due to increased temperatures. What that translates to us is we need to modernize our system. I think back about our founders, our forefathers, who back around the turn of the century, we all know Mulholland built the LA aqueduct, hundreds of miles to bring water to LA. And then in the 1930s, Metropolitan constructed the Colorado River Aqueduct, again, bringing water over hundreds of miles in the desert. We still rely on those systems today for our water in Southern California. Of course, in the 70s, you had the State Water Project. But the point is that they had the vision, they had the determination, they had the courage to make those types of necessary investments. And I'm not suggesting that the cost to modernize the system should be strictly borne by the urban centers or customers. I think it's a shared responsibility. I think there's a collective benefit and there's a collective good that we need to think about, and frankly, a value proposition for Southern California. It should be federal assistance, it should be state intervention, and it should be all the different communities that benefit from the water, urban, ag, environment, all the above. Because frankly, we have a shared risk, and we should mitigate that risk and share in the future benefits that improving our water system will bring.
Now, there was a ballot measure a few years ago, almost a decade ago, that actually was a bond that Californians voted for to give $8 billion for water projects.
Yeah.
But the money wasn't spent, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us, is it a money issue, or is it actually a will issue, or other factors that are involved?
Yeah, I think it's frustrating for all of us that the public has spoken, the voters want us to invest in our infrastructure. And I think you're referring back to 2014 when a bond measure. That included funding for additional reservoirs. One of them is still being planned. That's Sites Reservoir. And it takes a long time, unfortunately, to get through the regulatory and permitting hurdles. With that reservoir that I mentioned sites, it is hoped that next year they'll actually be able to break ground. There's been a lot of support recently, and it looks like things are moving forward. But that's just one of many projects. You know, we've long been advocates and supporters of the Delta Conveyance Project. That's the tunnel that is being proposed underneath the Bay Delta to help secure frankly, our existing allocation of water for the Central Valley and for Southern California. That project has been talked about for decades. And recently, the governor had proposed a streamlining bill. It didn't advance. So what we find ourselves often is locked into these discussions and with various interest groups. My concern is when we delay these types of decisions, ultimately, we're all going to suffer the consequences. And I think there needs to be greater awareness among the public of how critical securing our water reliability and resiliency needs to be going into the future. Because I don't know if it's always top of mind for the average individual. You know, they turn on the faucet, they see the water, that's great. But the reality is there's a lot that needs to take place to make sure you have that water available 24/7. Water is not a partisan issue. It crosses the divide among everybody. It's about serving our communities. It's about making sure we're able to deliver water to all sorts of demands in our communities. So I am hopeful, although I'm a little bit alarmist as far as some of the challenges we're facing, and that you bring up the fact that we didn't expend the funds. You're absolutely right. We need to find ways to move forward, and I think we can. We just need to make sure we understand the collective interest that we all share in making sure our statewide system doesn't fail.
A lot of people might not believe that it's possible to have the faucet on and the water doesn't come out. They think that's like not believable.
Yeah.
Is that if we don't build infrastructure,
Yeah.
is it possible to reach that stage where we could see shortages?
Yes, unfortunately. We've seen it happen in Mexico. You can Google what happened in South Africa recently with day zero approaching. During the last drought, certain parts of Southern California were in fact subject to restrictions. Some of them were under 1 day outdoor irrigation restrictions. So we had certain parts of California, Southern California, under what I would call severe restrictions in terms of water use. We don't want to be in that situation. None of us want to be in a situation where we're not able to sustain our way of life here in Southern California. And frankly, it's not just sustaining our way of life. We want to provide resilient and reliable water supply so we can thrive, we can flourish, and we can do it. We just need to make it a priority to make the necessary investments in infrastructure.
In terms of the water that's available in Delta, we have had different guests that have told us some of the water is going too much towards the environment. And sometimes the points that are calculated, they might be too far.
Yeah.
Do you think the water is getting allocated properly with what we have?
So I think you need to satisfy the various needs of the Bay Delta. I think keep in mind that in the absence of outflow of Bay Delta water to the San Francisco Bay, you could have salty ocean water intrude into the Bay Delta. And that could be disastrous for the Bay Delta, for our water supply, frankly. We can't have salt intruding into the Bay Delta. So there's always got to be an outflow of water. And there's also sensitive environmental species in the Bay Delta that we have to support. But at the same time, we also have a need to make sure that the water we need for agriculture, for urban centers in Southern California is also delivered. And that's why I say it's a mutual interest among all of us to work together. The proposed project will actually do all the above. It will support environmental habitat. It will make certain there's outflow to the ocean so that seawater is kept at bay. And it will deliver us the water allocation that we currently have reserved. So it does all the above. Now, I know many folks will say, well, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take 20 years to build. They're right, 20 years. But we could have started 20 years ago. If you don't start today, you're never going to get there. And some will say, well, it's the cost. It's currently, last year, Department of Water Resources updated the cost. It's $20 billion. Yes, it's a lot, but we're talking about the future of one of the primary arteries of water for the state. And they've done the cost-benefit analysis. It's a 2-to-1 meaning for every dollar we invest, there's a return on investment of 2 times that. Think of the economic ramifications of not having a reliable water system. We are, as a state, the 5th largest economy in the world. If we get to a point where we don't have reliable, resilient water supply, it's not going to only impact our ability to irrigate our yards, it's going to impact our high-tech industry. Right now, we're seeing a lot of data centers that need water. It's going to impact agriculture. And we know how critical it is for our national interest to have agriculture in the Central Valley and how big of an economic engine it is. But also, it's going to impact the environment if we don't have enough water. So it's really an all-the-above approach. And I will give credit. The Department of Water Resources released recently the California Water Adaptation Plan. And it's exactly what I'm talking about. It's an all-the-above approach. It's not just investing in the Delta Conveyance or Sites Reservoir. It's about recycling water. We have to continue investing in all the above, including groundwater desalination, including water use efficiency. And frankly, for us, I want to bring it back maybe to Eastern and our region. We've done all the above. We are a national leader in recycling water. We use every drop of wastewater we treat because in the absence of that, we have to import more water. 1/3 of our water portfolio comes from recycled water. It's used for agriculture. It's used for parks, schools, habitat areas, number of beneficial applications. But it's not just that. We're also doing groundwater desalination. We're doing water banking. When water is plentiful, when there's a surplus, we buy that water and we store it in the ground because we know there's going to be another drought around the corner and we need to have that water available. I feel like we've been very forward-leaning in terms of our policies and practices. And I would hope that others throughout the state will do the same. So that's why I wanted to underscore, we're not suggesting there's one solution. We're not saying Delta Conveyance or Sites Reservoir or recycling. We think it's all the above approach.
When people consume less, does it cause the water agencies to have to charge more because you're selling less water?
It's a great question. I think you have to look at your revenue model. How are you bringing your revenue to offset your operational cost? For us at Eastern, our region is in growth. We're adding 400 new customers a month. And that's been the case.
You're the fastest growing region in
We
California.
are the fastest growing region. So we are in a growth mode. When we have our bill to our customers, we have tiered rates. And frankly, I think having tiered rate structure helps our customers in terms of affordability and helps incentivize water use efficiency. We have a unique water budget for every customer based on the number of occupants in the house, based on how much yard space they have. Do they have a pool? We create a water budget for them. And if they are able to manage their needs within that water budget, they are paying the absolute lowest rates. Now,
so if you conserve more, you get a lower rate.
If you're efficient, yes. Now, I will say this, 80% or more of our customers stay within their water budget. The 20% or 15% that exceed, we do outreach. We offer services like we'll come out to your residence, we'll do an audit of how you're using water. Maybe they have a leaky pipe in their yard. Maybe they need to change out their spray irrigation to drip irrigation. We'll also offer financial subsidy to remove grass and put in drought-tolerant landscaping. So we have all these services to help our customers stay within their water budget. But overall, the bill that we provide to our customers, there is a service charge, which is a fixed revenue, but the majority of the bill is volumetric, meaning it depends on how much water you use. And if you stay within your budget, you're paying the absolute lowest rates.
We now go to Tony Estremera, who's the chair of Valley Water Board of Directors in Santa Clara. He's going to tell us how they have been running their water district and the challenges they're facing. They recently had to cancel a project that took a lot of efforts. Here's our discussion with Tony.
As we all know, it's very difficult to build anything in California. And these infrastructure projects are huge. They're very expensive, they're very huge, very complex. They're generally built in areas that are very sensitive. There are an awful lot of regulatory agencies. For instance, the Pacheco project that we just suspended, there was 13 different regulatory agencies that we had to deal with. And what happens is you make an arrangement with one, you make an agreement with another, and then when there are conflicts, you got to go back and forth. So you go around the circle of 13 over and over, and what happens is that it takes so much time that you continue to do these negotiations over a period of years. And as you do that, the costs continue to rise faster and faster. And that's why these things, the initial costs always change. And people think, well, you didn't do it right. Well, it's like anything else. It happens in your house too. The longer you wait, the longer it takes to plan it out, to go get city permits and so on, the costlier it gets. Not necessarily because you're going to do more, but because you've waited a certain period of time and now the costs are going up. And then, of course, the regulators require certain changes. And if they do, then again, this is not something that you've planned. So your costs continue to go up. And those are the challenges, the biggest challenges that we have. And of course, like I said, these are very complicated projects. They're built in very sensitive areas, and they are monstrous projects. They're humongous projects. They're very huge projects. And so it requires a lot of materials, a lot of contractors, and especially a lot of money.
You mentioned there's 13 agencies that you guys had to deal with on that one,
Yes.
and then apparently you have to go back and forth to make them happy, and they all want this project, right?
There have been attempts at changing some of the rules. The CEQA requirements have been a big drag on a lot of different projects, building projects, not just ours, but housing projects and other projects in general. Anybody can sue, and the big problem is that it takes a lot of time to resolve these different disputes. There have been attempts by the legislature and others, and also we also have pursued bills that would cut the period of time for review on environmental projects, and these environmental requirements get lost in court because they don't have priority for review. There are certain cases in the system that have priority. For instance, criminal cases have priority overall, and then housing cases, landlord-tenant cases, they have requirements that are very quick, 5-day response periods and so on. And they're put on an immediate calendar, so they take over the calendar, and they're the first of priority for hearing. Same thing with trials in those areas. But in CEQA areas, they are not given any kind of immediacy or priority for hearing. And so they drag on just like the regulatory periods. And so again, your costs continue to rise and rise and rise because you're waiting and you're litigating and you're trying to settle some of these cases, and it just keeps putting off the time period for doing the work. And so that has become very difficult in terms of building. And, the governor and some legislators have tried to reform CEQA without necessarily tearing out the fundamental requirements of CEQA, that there be reviews, that there be very sensitive and extensive reviews. That's fine, and that's always been supported. But again, that there be a priority in review, in making decisions, and so that we can move these projects along. And if not, we can kill them. It's one way or the other. But the sooner the better we know that we can get things done. So that has been really the biggest complication for us, is that and the regulatory factors.
You guys got into that project because you thought probably it would bring you a lot of water and a lot of value for your district. Like, can you tell us how was it to get into that? And then you guys had to give up, right, at some point. Can you tell us what was it like?
Well, we were ecstatic at first, when we competed across the state with everyone and were awarded, like I said, a large sum of money, over $500 million.
Was it a dam or a reservoir?
Our initial prospects were to investigate the area, and of course we had to litigate permission of the landowners there. So that took a period of time and money. We also had to deal with regulatory agencies as we went along. Could we do this? Could we do that? And so on. As we went along, the more we found, the more delicate it seemed to build there. And so looked like more requirements and the cost continued to go up. And for us, the most important thing was that we didn't want to get into a situation where we raised our water rates to a point that our constituents just couldn't handle. And we started a number of years ago, but as we went along, as you know, the last 4 years with inflation and the financial pressure on our constituents have become very, very delicate, tremendously hurtful. And so we always had to balance that out. And as we found that the federal government would not support the project, then we had too much limitations because we get federal water. If we can't store federal water, then we can't use the storage project.
We know that the water rates are on the rise in California across the state. Can you tell us why that is?
Well, like anything else, once water becomes a commodity, then it gets it gets valued as a commodity, and it gets treated as one. And so the costs are all different depending on where they come from and where they are. We have a hodgepodge of water rights all over the state, and so the folks that have ancient water rights, even though they don't use them, can sell them. And it depends on when they sell them. If it's during a drought, they're very valuable. If not, they're much cheaper. Whether it's a rainy year or a dry year, if there's a drought, that the value changes. For us, we're blessed in our county. We're having different sources of water that keeps our costs down. Our costs are generally in the middle, average, compared with all over the state, because we have different sources of water. We have underground water. We have, of course, conservation. We have recycle. And most importantly, we have delta water, which is our least cost water. Not all districts are blessed with that kind of variety. Some are only groundwater agencies. Some are only state water agencies. Some are only federal water agencies. And like I mentioned, we have recycle. We have the largest water purification center in the Bay Area, where we recycle water and increase the quality of water from what we call purple pipes, and that is an alternate supply. So all those different supplies keep our costs down. It really does depend on where the source of water is and the time when you get to acquire it, to buy it. And so that's why the costs are so different everywhere.
Now, Tony, you mentioned that we have a hodgepodge of the water rights. Can you explain that?
California started as a mining, as you remember, the 49ers and the gold rush. California really started as a mining state, and so the initial water rights panoply that we had was based on mining. And so there's a large group of water rights from that period that are maintained and have not really changed. Then there are, as California changed and grew, then there are different kinds of water rights. Some that the legislature created, most that were created by state court in cases, the common law, and so on. Now the legislature has basically stayed away from resolving this problem over the years because water wars are something that everybody tries to avoid. And so someday the legislature will get involved and maybe resolve some of these water rights issues. The courts are the only ones till now that have been engaged in resolving these disputes, and they have created a number of water rights also. So you have That's why it's so complex. It really depends on, again, where you are, where the water comes from, who has the rights, when they acquired it, if they changed it, and so on. And it's very, very difficult to resolve. It's always considered that water users are the ones that pay. This policy, state policy, that it's user pay is different than any other business that the state does. The public, we generalize costs for public benefit, but we don't do that with water. We say user pay, and so it's the special districts that pay for the water and the infrastructure, not the general fund. And so that's different. And perhaps that might be another reason why the legislature doesn't want to be involved. Somewhat like education before Prop 13. Education before Prop 13 was run locally through property taxes. After Prop 13, the state had to take over because property taxes changed. And so the state took over so that it could make up the difference initially after 1978. And this is kind of the same issue that the general fund does not pay for water, only the folks that use it. So those of us who are, for instance, the water freeway is a state water project, but it's not paid for by the general fund. It's paid for by those of us who use the water, those of us who buy water from the state water project, paid for the capital cost of the project, not the general fund. Initially, the general fund paid for it to build it, but we reimbursed it, and we've been reimbursing it as part of our water costs. So the general fund is not involved in that sense. It's all paid for by water users.
When we pay for these water bills, we are not only paying for the water, we're also paying for the infrastructure.
Exactly. That's correct. And like I say, it depends where you are. For instance, San Francisco's water project is Hetch Hetchy, and it's located about 100 miles away from San Francisco. And so they had to build infrastructure to move that water from where it is all the way to San Francisco. And also, they have partners, municipal partners, that also get water through their system. And so those partners and the city and county of San Francisco have to pay for that infrastructure. And for instance, they did not want to improve that infrastructure for a long time, many years. They decided that they wanted to keep costs down, and the best way to keep costs down is not to have to pay for infrastructure. And that's true, except that when they had to fix the infrastructure because it was falling apart, their costs went through the roof, and they required their costs went through the roof, and their water ended up costing more than 40-50%. And so you have to plan that. We planned that in our capital improvement plan, for instance. There are two ways of handling infrastructure. One way is to just wait until wait until it falls apart, and then you fix it, or you plan as you go along so that you place it on an actual basis depending on its actual life. And we're pretty good at predicting the actual life of these projects. So if you schedule them accordingly, and the rates, instead of going straight up, the rates are included in a plan that replaces your infrastructure as it gets old and needs replacement, then your costs are much more manageable. So it depends on which way you do it. Like I said, others have done it. They wait until it falls apart, and then their customers and their people have to pay for it. Or you do it more like we do, which is on a planned-based obsolescence basis, and so you keep your rates low that way because you're always building. We're an infrastructure agency. We're always building, and we're always building because infrastructure becomes obsolete. And if you plan it correctly, then you can keep your costs down. That's the most prudent way of serving your community. And we're always concerned as elected officials in making sure that we don't overburden our constituents. And so being able to work on a plan where you can replace your infrastructure and address its obsolescence in a prudent way will keep your costs down.
Let's continue our discussion with Joe.
We need to make what I call generational investments in our water system. Our statewide system to capture the water, store the water, and move the water hasn't been modernized in decades. The last major storage reservoir was constructed in 1979. We just haven't made the necessary investments to frankly be able to deal with the realities that we're seeing and that we're going to have to navigate going forward. I think that is a critical issue for us, is how are we going to make those generational investments so that, frankly, our kids and grandkids can thrive in this region. Our way of life in this region depends on water. And it's not just urban. It's our economy. It's our agriculture. It's the environment. If the statewide system isn't successful, if it fails, it's going to have damaging impacts on all of us. The environment, agriculture, urban, economy, everything. And frankly, I know this may sound a little bit too concerning, but there are other countries where they've experienced so-called day zero, where they have to ration water. They don't have enough water to support their demands in urban centers or economical demands or agriculture. We never want to be in that position. It's got to be advanced in a way that's adaptable. We don't know what the future is going to hold. We got to be careful at the same time as I'm calling out that we need all these investments. We got to make sure we're not overinvesting. If we overinvest and our demands continue to decline because of water use efficiencies, then we will be responsible for the cost of these investments that perhaps we didn't need. So the timing and the level of infrastructure investments also needs to be carefully calibrated with our needs, with our projections of what is going to happen to our population growth, to our demands, to our economy, to agriculture, to all the above. So it is a process of making sure you invest incrementally based on what your demands are going to be in the future, but you have to do it in a fashion where it's responsible and it's thoughtful.
In terms of the rates going up,
Yeah.
is this going to be a trend going forward based on what you see? Your region, you guys have invested in optimizing a lot of this, so your ratepayers don't have to pay a lot more. But other regions like San Diego, there's a proposal to increase by 60%, and there are other areas that are facing significant pressure.
Yeah.
Do you think that consumers will see higher rates going forward?
I think you got to think about the value proposition. If we don't make these types of investments that we're talking about, what are the consequences to our region? I think there's a lot of effort that's being made to try to mitigate the rising cost. But as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of inflationary impacts that are just simply beyond our control. My perspective is it's not about just the end user who should pay for these necessary investments. There needs to be federal and state support. This is national interest issue. It's not strictly about the end user turning on their faucet. It's about our economy. It's about our sustainability as a region to continue to thrive and flourish. So for that reason, I don't think these costs should be entirely borne by the end user. I think it should be a shared responsibility, and the benefits will be shared by all. But to answer your question, yes, the water rates will increase, but I think customers need to think about the value proposition. And what if we don't make those investments? What are the financial, economic consequences, and frankly, the impacts to our way of life in Southern California?
Joe Mouawad, General Manager of the Eastern Municipal Water District. It was great to have you on California Insider.
Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation, and I appreciate you making the time for us.
Should we invest in more infrastructure, and what are the steps we can take to expedite these projects? Let us know your thoughts. You can always email us at siamak@californiainsider.com or comment. We read all of your emails and comments. I'm Siamak Khorrami. This is California Insider. We'll see you next time.